Hello everybody, I'm Christoph Hombergs, Talion, Community Manager here at Sandbox Interactive. Over the past few days I've collected questions from you guys on Reddit, our forums and the other social media channels, asking us about where we're going with Albion Online, what we're doing with it. And I've gotten our Game Director Robin Henkys here to answer those questions for you. So, thank you very much for joining.
Thank you.
So, without further ado, those are the questions you asked. Are we planning to increase the number of weapons in the game? And it was particularly asked about special magic weapons like wind and lightning.
Okay, yeah. So we have quite extensive plans for additional spells and weapons. Right now we're doing the armor rework for Khador, which will introduce a lot more spell choices on armors. And afterwards our plan is to fill out the existing items with more spells. So add more spells to the existing swords, the fire staff, all these baseline items. Will get more choices to give you more variety when you've specialized in one of these things. And beyond that we have plans to introduce rare items. Rare items are also a baseline variant, which you'll be able to use in the same way. So there'll be something like rare swords, which will be distinguished with a single distinguishing spell, which is unique to this item. We don't have that many plans right now to add more baselines, like a wind staff. There will be a wind spell on one of the armors, a spell that can allow you to knock back opponents, should be quite cool. But there's no plan to add a wind staff or anything that right now, because right now we're focusing on getting the existing baseline weapons really polished up and really working well. And then when Albion is established for a longer time, we'll be looking more into adding additional baselines.
Okay, sounds great. Are we going to make characters visible when they're behind certain objects like trees or rocks?
Yeah, yeah. Short answer, yes. That has been on the agenda for a very long time. And actually, maybe by the time you're seeing this, it will already have been live, because it goes live with Khador.
Okay, great. And how exactly will it work? Do we see outlines or shadow?
So basically the characters are rendered fully as a solid shape behind objects if they're being obscured. So you can always tell kind of the shape of the armor, and you can tell the shape of the character. Is he mounted? Is he not mounted? The outline is still there, but it's being used for targeting like you're used to on a PC. And the color of the rendering will show you whether this guy is a hostile or a friendly, a guild member, and so on.
Sounds great.
And it also works for creatures. So you'll also be able to see mobs and animals hiding behind trees.
So no more dire wolf just pouncing you from behind that tree.
Hopefully not, no.
Okay, will we ever get APIs? If yes, are they going to be as advanced like those in EVE?
Yeah, I mean, API is, and maybe we should clear up what's meant by that. What we're talking about is a way of accessing the data of the game, or even manipulating some parts of the game from outside and opening this up to the community, right? And well, there's a bunch of obvious security concerns, but it's also some work to set that up. That said, we really want this to happen. We really want to give the community the tools to establish sites, to compare things, but we're also pushing for this ourselves. So what I can say is we're working on pushing some data out there right now, but until we have something that is like some of the more established MMOs have it, it'll be a while yet, because unfortunately, while it's a super cool feature, we're focusing on the game itself right now, right?
Yeah, it's more important after all.
Yeah.
Will the resource spawn rate be adjusted to have rare resources actually be rare instead of abundant as they are at the moment?
Yeah, we have some plans to rework the way resources work throughout beta. The rare resources right now spawn in several levels, and the earlier levels are very, very abundant, like players say. And one of the plans is to actually reduce the number of levels a little bit, so that the rarity is actually more like what you currently see for the higher rarity items. So actually, yes, we have plans to rework this, and it will go hand in hand with a more significant rework of the way resources work and crafting works with rare resources. but I'm not quite ready to say anything about that yet. It's still in the planning phase. It will come though, yes.
And we'll see each other again in a few weeks or so.
Yeah.
What's the plan on more vanity items? Is there something like that coming?
Vanity items, yes. I mean, that's another topic where we say nobody has anything against vanity items, right?
Mm-hmm.
We'd love to have lots of vanity items right now, but we've also made plans for making significant changes to the world, significant changes to the armor system, which has a lot of assets involved as well, and we're just not ready to commit resources to vanity right at this point, but we're always looking for more ways of producing more of it, and you will definitely see more vanity in the future of Albion.
Okay.
Definitely.
Is there any further information about customized player cities and open world buildings?
Yes. Okay. Yeah. I should separate those topics. So one topic is customizable cities, and this is more of a this is where we'd like to be at some point topic. It's a bit of a vision of the future, you might say. I mean, we always said we wanted player cities which are actually in control of the players, where players can decide certain things, where they can decide things like, is the city good at crafting blacksmith items, or is it good at magic items, or is it actually good more for farming, or is it good for trading generally? And to actually have players be in competition through a system like that is something that we would really love to do, but we feel is beyond the scope of what we consider the launch of Albion. This means that right now we have no plans to have this done for launch, but it's definitely still a fixed point of the agenda for beyond. And the open world buildings, on the other hand, this is something that we're talking about right now and that we're actually working on right now. And these open world buildings, what they basically do is they produce resources for their owner. So in zones where you also have guild territories, you will also have these open world spots where you can build these extractor buildings. We don't have a final name for them yet, so that is a completely temporary working title. But these buildings will basically function like an extractor. You'll place them there, they'll slowly produce resources. And what's special about them is they're in the open world, right? And they're in the open world in a PvP zone, and they can be attacked. Now, attacking them just destroys them. You can probably take the loot out of them. So if they produced anything up to that point, you can take that. But attacking doesn't quite go as easy. These buildings will be somewhat defensive. They'll defend themselves to a degree, but they will also put up a shield as soon as they've been attacked and taking a certain amount of damage. And while the shield is up, you will not be able to destroy them. So you'll basically be able to initiate an attack, but then you have to wait for the shield to fade until you can complete your attack on them. Once you've destroyed a building, you can place one of your own, and it will start producing stuff for you. But the real trick is obviously that the defenders, while you're waiting for the shield to come down, the guild who owns the building will be alerted to the attack, and they can move in to defend it and prevent you from destroying it. And what we hope to achieve with this is that players will be engaging a lot more in the open world. Right now, if you have if you're a guild and you're looking for PvP, all you can really do is roam. But what we're really hoping to get with this is you can target the other guilds' production. You can target their resource income to a degree, and that should be pretty cool.
Sounds like we'll get a lot of hotspot battles around those
that's the hope. Yeah.
Interesting. Okay, next one is about the learning point system. Is it working like you imagine it, or are you coming up with a new system?
To a degree, it's working like we intended it. The learning point system is tricky because it's hard to communicate while we stick to this idea. There's a lot of criticism of the system that we're aware of, but we're very convinced that we need something in this game that stops pure time investment from being always the superior thing, because we really don't want you as the players to burn yourselves out. To a degree, we want to say, hey, playing Albion a couple of hours a day is enough to kind of stick with the top dogs, and that's what the learning point system is for. Now, that said, the current implementation comes with a couple of problems, and we're going to be addressing those. One of the changes that's upcoming is that you'll be able to spend learning points even though you haven't made really much progress in the node you're trying to learn itself.
Okay.
And this will allow people who are actually playing under the curve, because there's a lot of people who aren't actually playing enough to spend all their learning points. This will allow these people to actually spend their learning points and kind of catch up. It'll basically be a certain guaranteed progress every day. And that's what we'll be doing with the learning points. The early spending will come at a penalty. So basically, if you don't play at all and you start spending, it'll be consuming quite a lot of learning points to get that piece of progress. So it's always more efficient to play yourself. But for the most part, this should allow people who are really behind the curve to kind of catch up. And this change we will be trying out during beta in one of the upcoming updates, yes.
Okay. Will the recent change that experience gained from killing T4 mobs, that it contributes to high tier progression, will this also be in the release of the game? Or is it something we just do for
Yes,
beta?
that's the plan. So one of the most frustrating things with limited resources, I mean, the world of Albion produces limited resources. It produces limited mobs, limited resources, everything. One of the most frustrating things for people is when they can't find something. Now, to keep the economy in check, we can't just throw infinite resources in. And one of the ways we're solving this problem is by lowering the minimum cap or the minimum tier required for kills to gain progress, which will allow you as a player to pretty much choose which mobs you want to kill for progress. And that's going to stay in the final game the way we have it right now, because the feedback has been very positive.
Yes, absolutely. I mean, people were so relieved after they can finally progress again and don't have to compete always with the red and black zone zergs for the high level
and
mobs.
that is also, I mean, that is also part of it. What we're being really careful about is we're obviously creating huge incentives to still go into the PvP zone, right? The caterer is launching the fame bonus for PvP zones. And that will significantly set apart T4 safe zones from PvP zones. And that should create a really strong incentive. But if you're the type of player who really never wants to play in PvP zones at all, then this does give you a very slow but working way to progress.
Okay. Are we getting an improved user interface for guild management?
This is kind of like the API question, right? Nobody in their right mind has anything against adding guild tools, right? We realize that guilds are one of the most important aspects of the Albion community, but we're in a tricky situation. We have to focus our production power somewhere, and that somewhere right now is, in our opinion, still the core game. We can have the most awesome guild management tools, but if we're not happy with the core game and where it's going, then that doesn't help us. So I hope you bear with us and understand that right now it's still not the top thing on our agenda. We already know what we want to do. We want to rework the entire guild interface. We want to give you good tools to see, how often people are online, what their contributions are, to manage ranks better, to explain ranks better. There's a lot of things on the agenda. We've added a few things that were targets of opportunity earlier this year, which were like using guild ranks in buildings and in islands and territories and so on. Well, not territories, but the other things require quite extensive logging and quite extensive technology work, and it's going to happen. There's no doubt about it. We realize you need this to run a guild, but if we build the tools now, we may not even know what the game is like by the time that we're finished with the changes to the core game. So, unfortunately, still a little bit more patience with that system, but it's coming. It will be coming. We know it needs to come.
Okay, next question. Will it be possible to hide helm and cape in the future to have some sort of character customization? I mean, some people don't.
That's
like
a much easier one than the previous one. Will it be able to hide helms? And yes, it's another one where we say, yeah, sure, it would be absolutely awesome. Whether you can hide those from your opponent will always be a question. I don't think we would want to be allowing that, because you would be hiding information about yourself. But on your own screen, hiding your own helm, we don't have anything against it. But unfortunately, we also still think, I just talked about a huge change to GVG that we want to make.
But they're asking about helm and cape. It's certainly more important.
Yeah. So we'll in short, it'll come at some point.
Okay.
But not right now.
Okay. Why did you guys choose to locate the game in Albion and not any other land?
Okay, that's an interesting question. Most interesting because I wasn't actually here at that point in time.
I wasn't, so tell me.
When development in Albion started, it didn't start as a story game, right? It didn't start as the idea that we want to tell this world, but rather we wanted a game where the players tell the story, right? So we wanted to make a game where as much as possible is in the player's hands. And what the team had chosen at the time was to say, okay, let's go with something where we can tell a little bit, but where the story doesn't push itself in the foreground too much. And that is basically the Arthurian myths. They decided that there's, the British myths are a good foundation. Everyone knows them. It's good enough to tie into. It's very cool. Everyone liked other games based on that as well, and movies. And we also thought, okay, but we don't want to do a classic reimagining of this. Well, actually, I wasn't there, so they thought that. And when I came in, I saw this game about about players building their own world, and about players conquering territory and building up and seizing land. And I thought, hold on, that sounds like a pretty interesting story that has a lot of vibes from history, but also combines it with King Arthur. And we started working more on the lore and the background, and we turned it into our very own version of the Arthurian myths. We're basically just picking a few names of characters there, and creating our own Albion, our own island that was hidden behind fog for thousands of years, and now all these players are coming in and rediscovering it. And yeah, so to answer your question in short, we picked this because it fit what we want our players to experience, the experience of taking a land that has not been held for quite a while. It's kind of wild and untamed, and taming it, and that seemed to work with what we had as a story.
Okay, today I learned. How far off is the current game from our ideal style of gameplay? Right now it appears to be mostly a PvE grinder with some tense PvP on the side. What changes are we going to make to reach this ideal?
Okay. Yeah, so I mean, for obvious reasons, or obviously, we're not finished with development right now, right? We chose to extend beta because we are not quite there with our ideal style of gameplay, and we want to be there before we launch. And we're very lucky to be in a position to be actually able to do this. However, we're actually not that far off. The question that you have to raise as a counter question to this one is, what is actually the gameplay, right? What is the one ideal gameplay? And my answer would be, there is not one ideal gameplay. Albion caters to so many different gameplay styles. You can be a crafter in the game. You can be a resource gatherer. You can theoretically play the game completely as a farmer if you wanted to. Or you can be a fighter, you can go into territories. There's so many different gameplay styles that you can play the game in, that I have a hard time answering what is the ideal one. What we're definitely looking at is what is the majority of people doing, and is that entertaining? But in the end, I would say no. The ideal gameplay for Albion is not to be a PvE grinder. The ideal gameplay for Albion is to be a player-driven game where you as a player can choose what to do in this world. And yes, for some aspect of it, if you want to become a really good fighter, you will need to work for that, and you will need to train for that, and that is part of that. But being a really good fighter is not the only thing you can do in Albion. You can easily not have any advanced skills and still be an extremely powerful figure in the game, because you can be a market trader, or you can be a guild leader, or you can be a diplomat. You can take on all these different roles that don't necessarily require you to have a bunch of skills. But sure, if you want to be the best at something and beat the other players that way, and not just outsmart them, but in mechanics you want to be the best, then you're going to have to work for that, because we need a way to limit that. Otherwise, everyone would just choose to be the top guy, right? So being the top guy will be some work always, and that is for us what we aim for, and that's not changing. But we think if we can push these organizational aspects, these social aspects of the game, like I said, on the open world buildings, where the open world buildings create a lot more opportunity for raiding other guilds and for moving about in the open world. If we can push these aspects, then the actual power progression becomes less important in the game, and it gives more opportunities for players to do really meaningful things without necessarily having the absolutely top equipment unlocked.
Okay. Is there any plan to do certain mob resistances, for example, that when you hit an undead with a cursed staff, he takes less damage?
The short answer is no, there aren't any plans for this. And the reason being is we want groups to form as freely as possible. We want as many social interactions as possible. And adding something where a certain weapon combination is required would exclude certain players from participating in certain interactions, right? If as a if for a certain dungeon, curse staff just doesn't work, it means I'm excluding every single player who uses curse staffs, and that's not something that we want to do. We prefer to keep as many opportunities to play together as possible.
Makes perfect sense. On the upcoming wipe, how do we intend to keep the game balanced, considering the overflow of returning and new players? Because this has been an issue with when the closed beta started, and how are we going to tackle that problem?
Balancing a beta start or a game start for a game like this has been one of the big challenges every single time we've done it. Because the natural curve of activity is that everyone is hyped up for day one, and then without us even doing anything, the attention goes down, and we level out at a reasonable standard level. And the question really is, how do we deal with that? Recently, we've often dealt with it by multiplying the resource amount, and something that we are looking into is to actually scale to a certain degree based on activity, something that we're exploring. But in reality, we will probably do something, and this is not final, because we haven't made the final plans for it. But we will probably work with increased rates for resources at the beginning again, and then scale those down along with the curves of lowering activity like we've just gathered from this previous launch. So the data will allow us to adapt better to the situation than before. But it'll always be a problem. I mean, it's one world, lots of attention on one point. It's very hard problems to solve in reality.
I imagine. Okay. Last questions. Can we get any details on those blueprints in regards to faction armor or weapons?
I presume this is referring to the forum discussion regarding faction items. We actually have moved on a little bit from the concept, calling the whole thing rare items right now.
Okay.
And while I would love to discuss it, there's still we're still exploring so many different ways of making the item system awesome that I'd love to not go into that detail right now. I think what you can take away from this is we are working on getting the item system in Albion a lot more exciting, a lot more drop based. So we're trying to get find ideas that work with getting exciting drops from creatures. So give you a reason to go to certain dungeons. But also does not destroy the role of the crafter, right? And the blueprints, the idea behind the blueprints was to go into that bit where we say, something drops, which you can then take to a crafter, and the crafter can turn it into a faction item. But we'll be releasing more information on the future of the item system as we go along. But there'll always be, there'll obviously always be player crafting as a central aspect.
I certainly hope so.
Yes, I mean, it's the centerpiece of Albion.
Okay, well, then thank you very much for your time, Robin. Thanks for asking, and I'm sure we'll do this again. See you next time.